I am happy to talk with Meg Berry, and we are going to talk about self-love and Tantra and alchemy of innocence. And we're going to do like really, really juicy meditation. I'm going to experience it. So you too at home or wherever you are and watching this, you can join us and do the meditation. Meg is going to guide us. And let me first change the screen so we can get it better, much better. So welcome everybody, and Meg is a wellness professional, and she is also a singer, songwriter, and mother of 3 children, but she's calling herself Tantra cowgirl, and I love that. And she's Harvard graduate, and the yeah, and the owner of Body, yeah, and the creator of Tantra Core, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more today. But we are talking about her own journey as well, because she really healed herself after lifelong PTSD and body dysmorphia with Tantra. And after that, Meg was really lit up with the desire to make the Tantra and its effective healing accessible to everybody. And welcome, Meg. I'm really, really happy to talk with you. And today, it's like, I love to talk about self-love because it's everything, right? It's everything. Well, I think so. So tell us a little bit about yourself, your own journey and your own past, how you got into this place and teaching Tantra. And
sure. Well, I mean, the journey ends with me spending an intensive year studying with Sam Isadora, the late great Sam Isadora, and I actually did both of her certifying programs. So I'm a certified Tantra coach. That's where the story ends, and it ends with me tasting the taste of self-love for the very first time in 43 years of my life. But, you know, the journey began for me in Asia and Africa and in the United States, but mostly Asia and Africa. I grew up mostly in third world countries, and my oldest memories of our being into a world at war, whether coups or famines, or, you know, it was just newly the post-Vietnam era, and the world was reverberating in the United States with deep trauma, and also in Southeast Asia with deep trauma from that. And so, I've been treated for PTSD almost my entire life. My mom became a therapist specializing in what would soon be called PTSD, in part inspired by everything she saw my brother and I go through living overseas. And then eventually they came up with the term PTSD. So I started being treated for that when I was 6. And when I became a teenager, I just noticed that the key to healing my mind was healing my body.
Yeah. How did you notice that? You know, I'm curious, like, did something happen? Something special happen that you saw like, wow, this is working. Something is affecting in my body, what's coming in the mind, you know?
Yeah, very definitely. When you're an American living overseas, even if you're a European living overseas, you know, we live in these very cloistered diplomatic communities. And often the safe place for Westerners to hang out in is the red light district, and where all the nightclubs and all the bars and all the hookers are. So I actually started hanging out in red light districts when I was 10. And so I was permitted to, I started flying around the world by myself when I was just 7 years old with my brother. And so by the time I was 10, you know, I was a seasoned world traveler, and I was allowed to hang out in the red light districts with my friends by myself at age 12. And what we would do is we would go into the discos and we would dance for like 8 hours. Like we'd get there at 6 and we'd leave at 2. But we'd do nothing but dance.
Yeah.
And I started to realize that the years that I was living overseas and able to just go dance and go free and be wild, and, you know, my mental health improved greatly. And then I would move back to the United States and I'd go back into psychotherapy. And I would get deeply, deeply depressed And in fact, I was put on antidepressants because I became suicidal when I went back to the United States. And so, sometimes I'd spend 2 years abroad, 2 years in the US, but usually I went back and forth 1 year, 1 year. So the way my life played out was it was just like a coin flipping, and I'd be overseas and I would just dance. And then I'd come back to the United States and there were no clubs for me to go dancing. It was a very sedentary life, and I'd go into psychotherapy and become deeply depressed. So eventually I started sneaking into nightclubs in the United States.
Because you wanted to experience the movement, or, because it made you feel better when you are on that free flow.
Yeah, I always did better when I was able to dance it out.
Yeah.
And it just so happened that the therapists that I was working with were in the Boston area. They were trained by Bessel van der Kolk, who wrote The Body Keeps the Score and is really considered one of the premier researchers in PTSD. So these were really well-trained, cutting-edge people that I was working with. But, for me, my PTSD was so bad that if I tried to breathe in deeply, it would trigger a traumatic flashback. And I remember one therapist saying to me, just because she got really freaked out by this, and she was like, well, just don't breathe deeply. Just don't breathe. Right?
Oh, right.
God bless her. There's more wrong about that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The key to my healing, breathing.
Yeah.
And I needed to know how to breathe. And she needed to know how to breathe in order to hold a space.
For you.
And so, those were the very nascent stages of PTSD. When you think back to the day where it wasn't that long ago, where in the United States, if you had PTSD in the military, World War I, they put you down. They called it shell shock, and they would put you down in the field.
Yeah.
Rather than bring you home in that condition. So World War I was not that long ago. So we've come a long way since then, but it was a pretty contentious relationship between me and my therapist, because I had this innate sense that my mind would not heal unless my body led the way. And here they were trying to kind of take this cutting edge research and heal my whole being through my mind. And, I remember one therapist saying to me, she had the best intentions, but I was 16 and I was back in the US. I was very depressed. And she said, you are like a magnificent vase.
Okay.
And you've been shattered. And she said, so we in therapy can glue you back together again, but you'll never be unbroken. Can you imagine being 16 and being told that you are a shattered vase?
Yeah.
And that the best that you can do in life is trick people into thinking that you're whole.
Yeah, that you never get better. Yeah.
Fast forward 20 years, we know neuroplasticity, right? I am a magnificent vase. My vase was completely shattered. And when you know how to breathe properly, you can not only glue your vase back together, but you can heal it entirely to be one whole, unbroken, magnificent vase. I mean, evolutionarily, I get this from one of my professors at Harvard, evolutionarily, we were regenerative by nature. Then our species decided that evolutionarily, it was better to favor scarring.
Yeah.
I've never tried this. Please don't try this at home. According to my professor, if you take a child under the age of 5, and again, please don't try this, and you cut off their finger somewhere from the nail above, and don't intercede medically at all, that child will grow back a fingertip with no signs of trauma, no scarring, no nothing, just like a gecko grows back its. And that's an artifact from the time where we were regenerative by nature. So this is actually a cutting edge of research now in medical science, because several of the researchers, as far as I understand it, I'm not an academic, so I just try to keep in touch. But from what I understand, they got sick and tired of the politics of stem cells. And so now they're looking at how do you trigger this archaeological or this artifact of evolution and trigger that regenerative ability that is within us. Before we start exploring. So for me, I have various ideas about the role that breath and the tantric philosophy play in accessing that ability to regenerate and heal, and opening it up.
So what was it for you? Like, you know, they were trying to heal you and your PTSD, like through the mind. And when you mean like through the mind, because I believe like we can really heal the mind as well, and heal the mind, heal the body through the mind, and the other way around. You know, it's like as we look at it holistically, of course. But you know, why do you see like it wasn't working for you, like healing the mind? Or what was like, was it like related to your emotions that you were not able to express it or feel it or experience like what is really going on in you and then release it? Or how was it for you? What was in your journey?
I agree with you. You know, what I tell people is that there's a dialogue going on between your mind and your body. It's not mind over matter. Not, you know, it's not that the mind is powerless to the body. You know, in an ideal world, it's a reciprocal dialogue where the mind speaks the language of the body and the body speaks the language of the mind, but they don't speak the same language.
No.
You're right. So, and that's where the observer comes in, and that observer becomes multilingual. You know, Bessel van der Kolk's book, The Body Keeps the Score, was revolutionary because it acknowledged the wisdom of the body. So, you know, for me, my mind could not heal my body in part because I had so many traumatic memories in my body. I loved yoga. I almost went to India to study Iyengar yoga with BKS Iyengar. And I loved it, but I had to come to terms with the fact that it was like a drug for me. And part of the cycle that it would kick off for me, I would go do yoga and I would be ecstatic and I would be blissful and oh my God, this is amazing. And then I would come crashing down and all of a sudden I would like be filled with rage. And it was so clear to me because I was so in my body innately, and also through having these very embodied experiences growing up overseas where many of the cultures I lived in were naturally very embodied. It was so clear to me that the yoga would, you know, I would release too much from my muscles and too much from my organs too fast, and that I needed a mediated release. And then later I tried experimenting with different forms of yoga that were more geared towards people with PTSD. For me personally, I never found a yoga that I could do that didn't kick that off until I started practicing Tantra.
And what changed then, you know, because you mentioned that you really found self-love and finally kind of find the connection with yourself, that you love yourself. I love myself. You told me about your experience. I would like to hear that again, like how you saw yourself at the first time and you were just like, I love myself. And that's beautiful because that's like, but tell me, after doing all that yoga, and what changed when you started doing or practicing Tantra?
Well, in between yoga and Tantra, I found classical Pilates. And classical Pilates was a very key step in helping me to heal my PTSD. And there's a lot of science behind why that would be true. And there's a lot in common between classical Pilates and Tantra. But so, you know, I had about a 10-year career as a classical Pilates trainer. And then I had started studying Tantra a few years ago, but then I studied intensively with Sam. And so I was working for Sam Isadora as a lead trainer during one of her workshops in July of 2016. And it was a 3-day workshop called Ignite, focused on igniting Shakti energy, for women only. And we had done a fire ceremony the night before, and then we had done a whole day on Saturday. And it was actually interesting because the night before, after the fire ceremony, I was in the bar. I wanted to get a shot of tequila just before going to bed because, just felt nice. And so I went to the bar to get a shot of tequila, and I was approached by two men. One is a film director, a very successful film director, and his best friend, who's a doctor. And we were having fun and talking and chatting, what have you. And he said, "Oh, let's take a selfie."
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say he's a celebrity, but he's kind of a little, well, gosh, now I'm going to get in trouble. Yes, he's a celebrity. He's a film director. Of course, he's a celebrity. So anyway, the point is that I should have been someone who was like, yes, let's take 10 selfies,
Yeah.
But instead I was like, oh, and he's like, you don't want to take a selfie with us?
Yeah.
And I just said, I hate photographs. And he looked at me and he said, you, of all people, should love the camera. Get over it.
Wow.
Picked up their stuff and they walked out.
Mm-hmm.
Right? On the one hand, I could be like, diva,
Mm-hmm.
and there was so much truth in what he saw.
Yeah.
Which he saw completely into the fact that was rooted in me not loving myself.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't want to be around it. And I don't blame him, So it was really ironic because the next day, I was not expecting at all, after this long day and this beautiful, intense day of coaching, I was just walking through the room that we were in, and I passed a mirror and I looked up, and the thought that flew out of my mind was, love me. And I was like, wait, what? And so I walked back in the mirror, and there was that thought again. I love me. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I love myself.
Yeah.
I'm 43 years old. I've been to Harvard. I have a string of accomplishments. I have 3 beautiful children. And now I know what it's like to love myself. Right?
And what is the feeling? Can you describe the feeling? Because I know, because I was looking for quite a long time to,
Well, part of it is the dysmorphia is not there. That feeling of looking in the mirror and seeing things that are distorted. So that's number one. And number two, I just felt grounded and whole, and in my body and in my being and in love.
Yes.
In that energy of love, vibration of love. And very luckily, we had a photo shoot scheduled for right after that. So I have a photograph that was taken not that long after that moment where I'm lying on a piano and I love me. And it's not like, like you and I have been talking about having a bad hair day, right?
Yeah.
It's not like
today
or something, I'm like, Salon used to say to me, she's like, girl, get a blowout, and I knew what she was talking about. I was walking around with mom hair all the time, and she was like, treat yourself every once in a while, worship the goddess in you, and so, like some days I'm just like, I'm not sure if that shirt works, but that's very, very different than the self-loathing that was there. And, when I was younger, I had a lot of opportunity. I was actually offered a modeling contract by one of the top modeling agencies. And I walked out of the meeting. And I tried to pass it off like, oh, who wants to be a model? Modeling's stupid, because I was also a rock and roller. But deep down inside, I felt like the biggest failure in the world, because I felt like in order to take photographs and do that, I would either have to drug myself into numbness to try to put out the fires of self-loathing, or my biggest fear is that people would see that I hated myself, right? And I was actually dating a rock star, a real life rock star. So, it's just, I'm 44 now, and I love myself and I love my body more than I've ever loved myself in my entire life. And my kids know what that self-love is now because of this. I think
because you have taught them, what it is and how to do that. Because what's
Yeah.
happening. We talk about that a little bit earlier, what's really happening. Like parents are not teaching kids because they don't know how to, because they are not connected with themselves.
Right.
So
The kids don't know the difference between you and them and are
yeah,
judging. So
yeah.
if you hate yourself, they hate themselves. They just don't know why,
Mhm.
right? And if you love yourself, then they love themselves and they don't know what changed. Um, and I think that there's a scientific explanation that's rather simple and unglamorous regarding what happened. And I think the scientific explanation is these breath works that are so simple but so powerful
Mhm.
basically increase your bandwidth for pleasure, because
Yeah.
evolutionarily we're biased towards negativity.
Mhm.
To survive, we spend much more of our brain power and consciousness focusing on negativity for the sake of survival. So you
Mhm.
actually have to train yourself to be in your senses and
Yeah.
to experience pleasure.
Yeah.
When you increase your bandwidth that way, I believe that that's what opens up the portal to taste something like self-love.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, that's how we grow up. And that's what mine does, all that second negative self-talk and all those ideas and all that comparison and competition. And it's really hard to learn to accept and love yourself in this culture and in this world that we're living today, because there's so many requirements and standards, and we just like have to do what we think that we should do instead of asking ourselves what we want to do. So what do you think, because I see quite often like women especially, they have hard time to accept and approve themselves and love themselves. Like, what do you think, why is that? What's the reason for it?
Well, I think it's everything that you just said.
Mm.
All these well-intended, benevolent things. You grow up as a parent, your role is to protect the child, but the way that ends up coming out is no, don't touch that. No, don't do that. No, 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 no.
Yeah.
And that just goes into your conscious and subconscious and really inhibits your permission. I also think that we use judgment and shame to organize information. This is the geeky anthropologist in me talking, where we could be using discernment instead. In Tantra, the first principle is no judgment. And
Yeah.
so it's really easier said than done, because no judgment. Well, what does that mean? How do you walk around not judging? And what you need to do is you need to shift from judging to discerning, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you discern that someone is out of control and therefore you're going to stay back, but you can discern without judging them. But
Yeah.
until you know the difference between discernment and judgment,
Yeah.
why would you practice one over the other if
Mhm.
no one had ever even said that to you, right? So the first step is awareness.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I love that awareness, like awareness about everything, what's going on in your body at first, what's going on in your mind first, what's going on around you. And, I really I took your workshop last week, and you talk a little bit about masculine and feminine energy, and everybody's having that, like both sides.
Mm-hmm.
And my experience is like I'm really I found my feminine side just recently, a couple of years ago, like really stepping into that power, and it had opened up for me like so many different aspects and so much more understanding myself, who I am, but so much more power and confidence, and really like feeling grounded about being myself. And it's related to a lot, of course, like to self-love. But how can we embrace more like the masculine or feminine side in us, in ourselves? Like, can you talk a little bit about that?
That's a whole that's a whole 9 month journey right there.
I know.
How much time do you have? Should we just spend the next 9 months together?
I know. Maybe we need to do a workshop or something.
So I'm trying to think of one simple thing that you could do. Well, in all honesty, in Tantra, when you learn how to breathe, you ignite a path to healing, right? And all you need to do to ignite that path to healing is to learn to breathe. And the act of breathing is an interplay of the masculine and feminine within you.
Yeah.
And so on so many different levels in so many different ways. So I would say if you want to connect with your masculine and feminine, heal it and harmonize it, start a practice of breath work, even just 1 minute a day.
Yeah.
We'll start that. And folks can go to YouTube, to my channel on YouTube. It's under Artful Body, which is my studio right now, ARTFUL BODY, or you can find me on Facebook at Tantra Cowgirl. And I have
I'll post a link, I'll post a link to your YouTube channel, later.
Yeah, I have a ton of free videos on there teaching how to breathe. But that's the first step. That's the very first thing that I would do is gift yourself the practice of even just 1 minute a day of breath work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of breath work, did you know to do today?
Yes, absolutely. One more question before we go there. So what is people are not always knowing what is Tantra? Very simple. What is Tantra? Is it like weird sex thing, or what? Tantra is not yoga, or am I doing Tantra if I'm doing yoga? And what is it all about? What is your description to Tantra?
Tantra is definitely a weird sex thing.
No,
I'm so teasing. Tantra is a 5,000-year-old system. So it's a 5,000-year-old system. It gave birth to all of yoga. It gave birth to the entire understanding of the chakras. It gave birth to all of chronic healing. It's a deep and ancient system. What I tell people is you look at allopathic medicine, Western medicine, and you don't say that allopathic medicine is all about the vagina because we have obstetrics and gynecology, right? It's one aspect. The Kama Sutra is one sutra. It's one of Tantra. And it's a very interesting discussion as to why potentially we take this vast system of healing that's about the harmonizing and integration of polarities like masculine and feminine, and we dull it down to a very simple, very charged thing, right?
Yeah.
So, all of Tibetan Buddhism is half tantric, half Buddhist, right? It's the marriage of those two. So, I like to say, find out why the Dalai Lama is always smiling, right?
Yeah.
And also, you think about Sting's famous interview where he talks about 9-hour orgasms. Tantra is blissful living. When you practice these simple but powerful practices, you have an abundant sense of well-being in you, and it is kind of orgasmic. You're in bliss, right? So you can think about Sting's 9-hour orgasms and go, really? Only 9 hours? Only 9 hours? Come on, man. There are 24 hours in a day. Why just not?
Yeah.
So, in a nutshell, that's Tantra. It's called the meditation of the senses. And it's called the accelerated path because it truly is an accelerated path to healing.
Yeah.
It's got a few other names too. But.
Yeah. And for you, what was the, how did you start your own self-healing with Tantra? Was it with the breath work or, and the movements?
I was intuitively guided to Tantra, and I had started engaging in Tantra without knowing. I had started to listen to mantras by Diva Premal and Mitten, and I found myself going, why am I listening to this? This is not my thing, right?
Yeah.
But I was so strongly guided to it. And little did I know that they're tantric. I didn't know that at the time.
Yeah, I didn't know that either, but I love them. Yeah.
Most people don't.
No.
But they were if I understand correctly, they were brought together by Osho. Ooh.
Yeah. Yeah, Osho, I love, yeah, he's,
Right. So,
yeah,
you know, Osho, the Dalai Lama, they're tantric, you know,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it's so interesting that yet we associate the power of Tantra, we try to contain it to, you know, the Kama Sutra, when actually the influence of Tantra is living and breathing all around us. We just
Mm-hmm.
talk about it that way.
Yeah.
And then I was introduced by a mutual friend who was a very wise person to a man who's a tantric, and he was curious about Pilates, and so I taught him some Pilates, and he was like, "Oh my God!" After 2 minutes, he's like, "When do I get to stop? This is torture."
First time of everything, you know. I remember my first yoga class still. Oh my God, that was horrible.
Yeah. But so we did an exchange. I taught him classical Pilates, and he taught me some tantric breath work, and he did different exercises and all these different exercises. And so I studied a little bit with him, and it was kind of like a mishmash. It was, you know, because we were trading, you know, so
Yeah.
it was kind of like, oh, that reminds me of this, and oh, that reminds me of this. And then I was like, you know what, I want to study with someone.
Mm-hmm.
Took me about 2 years of that mishmash back and forth.
Yeah.
And I want a focused, studied experience. And I found Sam Isadora. And then I started commuting to LA to study with Sam. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So let's do the meditation now, and tell us a little bit about meditation. What is this meditation all about? And
Well, first of all, I just, disclaimer, I got kicked out of meditation class. So just so you know.
It's okay. I can take that.
When I started this journey to learn how to meditate, when I was 18 years old, I was given an exercise to sit quietly and imagine a flame, a candle flame, flickering right here at my third eye. Talk about my PTSD in action. So I sat there imagining the flame, and then all of a sudden I was in the middle of a ring of fire, and I felt like I was being burned. And I was like, ooh. So I
Oh.
quietly got up and I went to the front of the room, and I talked to the professor, who was Japanese, and I whispered very quietly into his ear to tell him what happened. And he just looked at me and he went, "You no meditate."
Oh, yeah, too much.
Out of class. And I was like, oh my gosh, I just got kicked out of meditation. And so now here I teach meditation for a living, right? So there you go. We're going to do a very simple breath work. Sam used to call it the bliss breath.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a practitioner of yoga, you might know it as Ujjayi. But for this moment, I'm going to invite you to think about it as the bliss breath.
Okay.
And if English is not your native language,
Mm-hmm.
I want you to translate the word bliss into your native language.
Mm-hmm.
And I want you to engage bliss, ecstasy,
Mm-hmm.
I want you to engage with this breath from the spirit and the energy of that word, bliss, right? Because every word emits its own energy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and the reason we're focusing on bliss is because it's going to trigger the release of serotonin and dopamine.
Yeah, I love that. I'm open. I'm ready. Hope everybody else is ready there too. So join us to this meditation and just find a really nice, comfortable seating position, I guess.
Yeah, anything that's comfortable.
Yeah.
Don't fight gravity for the body.
Yeah.
So you can do this down or seated, whatever's comfortable to you. But you're going to close your eyes to start. Where your gaze goes, so goes your energy. And
Oh, it seems like we lost Meg today. That was a beautiful, beautiful meditation. Internet did something that we didn't expect. That's what's happening sometimes when we are doing live. If you have any questions, you can always email us. I will post the Meg's YouTube channel, so you can really check out her YouTube videos. They are amazing breath work that you can start doing and connecting. And I feel really good about after that meditation. So relaxing, and it's like just like 5 minutes per day, and you can really get connected and releasing all that stressful emotions, stressful ideas, about yourself, about other people, negative thoughts. It's really important that we do that consistently every day. So thank you for joining, and I'm looking forward to see you on the next Clat show. Bye.